Hi, and welcome everyone to today's episode. And we are going to talk about human design and how human design can help you trust your own decisions, your own decision-making process, and stop second guessing yourself, because aren't we all raised to second guess ourselves all the time with all the options out there? How do we make decisions in a way that feels true for us? That's in general the topic today. And I have with me Chelsea Fournier here today. Hi, Chelsea.
Hello.
And before we dive into this juicy topic, Chelsea, maybe would you like to present yourself? Let us know who you are, where you're from, what you do in this world, and also end with a cycle check-in, meaning the day of your cycle you're on, and 1, 2, or 3 words that describe how you are today, what you bring to the table.
I would love that. Thank you for having me, of course. So my name is Chelsea Fournier. I live here in the States in North Carolina in a cute little beach town with my husband and my 3-year-old toddler. And I am a bit of a mutt in business. So I like to share that because some of your listeners and viewers might resonate with even what I used to be. I think for many of us, there's what we're currently doing. And sometimes it's interesting to know what we used to do. So my first profession, let's say, was actually as a corporate lawyer. So I worked with a lot of startup companies. I was legal counsel to hundreds of different businesses. Then I stepped more into straight business coaching. And over the course of, let's say, 2021, I really stepped into my own spiritual awakening, my own spiritual journey, deepening, why am I here? What do I want to be when I grow up? Why do I have all of these left brain skills? Who am I meant to help? And I started to really tap into the purpose and the mission that I have is to help other healers and coaches make a bigger impact. And doing so often requires some of the business skills, but you don't want to, if you're a healer, if you're a coach, if you're into the woo-woo, you don't want to go work with a 60-year-old white overweight dude who's a business coach telling you what to do and how to do projections. And so I know that I've always been very gifted on tapping in and tying in my intuition and then layering that on top of strategy. And over the past year, I've also added to my tool belt human design as an energetic tool that I help my clients with. And so I'm kind of like this little unicorn of being like a decade in online marketing and business coaching and with that lawyer background. But now I'm really here for just tapping into the intuitive business mentor side, helping women specifically to step into taking up more space online, creating their message, bringing their message out, helping others. And I like to see that ripple effect that I'm like, if I could just help them to grow their audience bigger and to receive abundance for the gifts, the knowledge, the expertise that they bring to the world, that's really my purpose. And so now I specialize in human design to help make sure that women are creating businesses that they are born to run, not just copycatting what you see someone else do. And so that's in a nutshell kind of my transformation story. Today, I'm arriving here on day 5 of my cycle. I am just finishing my bleed. And if I were to say 3 words, I actually feel really well rested. I did prioritize rest during my cycle this time. I feel creative and I feel like visionary, kind of in visionary mode in my life right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just in case someone's watching or listening who says, but I'm not a business owner, don't worry. You will get a lot out of this
We are
too.
all humans. We are all humans.
And you have to make decisions all day long, even when you're a mama with 2 little kids.
Oh my gosh. Yes, yes, yes. And I use a lot of what I do as far as like creating routines and systems. I am someone who craves routine. For many of us, our nervous systems crave routine. And so much of what I do in business, I translate through. My 3-year-old will often say, like, as we're going to bed, putting him down for bed, he'll say, what's our plan for tomorrow? Like he likes, little kids like to know what the plan is for tomorrow and likes to know. And, you know, if we just bring what's good in business into life and vice versa, I think it can all just be an extension. And I think we'll specifically talk about how human design has helped some of the relationships in my life and parenting as well. So definitely stay tuned regardless of whether you're a business owner or not.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I mean, our system just wants to keep us safe. So it loves safety, and routines help. Or even you can see it as rituals. If routine is too dry for you, see it as little rituals, daily rituals that you can hold on to. Yeah, so for myself, I am on my day 6 today. I feel still inward. I feel calm in the midst of a tumultuous day, which is an interesting feeling, being this like center. And really excited about this conversation.
Awesome.
So, as we have already said, we will speak about human design. Now, it might be that someone listening or watching does not know what human design is. Can you maybe try to explain it in a nutshell, this whole concept of human design, which is a philosophy on its own?
It is. And I think part of what I bring as lightness to the topic is I believe if anybody listening does know human design, I am a 1-3 generator. And people who have a 1 profile, and especially generators who have a 1 profile, are here. Like the number one word about me is mastery. When I step into a topic, I like to master it and then get to a place where I can turn around and make it much simpler. And I did that in my legal career for years, and I've done it in business coaching. And so it's about like synthesizing so that people who come into human design through my world, hopefully never feel overwhelmed. Because if a tool resonates with you, it shouldn't be overwhelming. And if a tool does overwhelm you, perhaps it's either not being presented in a way that kind of lands on you, or maybe it's not the right tool for you. And that's okay. I'm not dogmatic to say everybody has to do human design and everybody has to put themselves in a box based on what you learn. So human design in of itself, it's an energetic tool. So it combines astrology, the I Ching, the Kabbalah tree of life, the chakra system. And it kind of, when you go to enter your chart, if you've never run your chart before, you can actually go to runyourchart.com. I own that, and it's safe and free, and you can go run your human design chart. But what you do is you enter your time, so your birth date, time, and location, and it creates this image. And if you've never seen it before, it just looks like a bunch of shapes. There's actually 9 shapes, and they are energy centers. And so as many of us know, there are 7 chakras. The Human Design Center kind of has 2 additional energy centers. And so what it looks at is when you were born as kind of your soul imprinted, what was the energy of the cosmos at that exact time and location? And how could that inform you about maybe what you were born to do? And you can go deep and you can start to learn about how your bedtime routine should flow and how you should parent your children. And like you can bring this into so many different aspects of life. Something I'm really fascinated with is that human design, each of us are designed to make decisions from our body, but we are taught to make decisions from our mind. And that was the number one thing that drew me into human design. I was like, okay, I know I could learn a bazillion things about myself. It really is about self-awareness. And like I said, it can feel almost like an instruction booklet of like, oh, somebody knows me, right? Like so many times when I look at a chart with someone, they'll either say, I feel so seen, even though I'm just validating to them what their chart says. And perhaps if you've ever dove into astrology or dove into enneagrams or anything that gives you more self-awareness, if you feel more seen and you understand yourself more, I think that's a win. Now, with human design, it's different from, say, for example, taking an Enneagram quiz, because when you sit down to take an assessment or to answer a quiz, you're sitting down with all of the baggage and limiting beliefs that you have in this moment. And what human design does is looks at what were you actually born, kind of like the factory reset. You know, like what was the intention for your lifetime here? What were you designed for? And so many of us have baggage and limiting beliefs and what we call in human design conditioning. You know, I have a 3-year-old, and I know from studying psychology that like I've gotten till age 7 where I can really try to implant some good core beliefs, because otherwise things that we absorb before the age of 7 really get like shocked into our system, right? And so what the human design experiment, it's kind of the term that many of us use, is that it's an experiment, is like once you learn about your design, if it resonates, I like to pose the idea, what would it look like to be 10% more in alignment with my human design today? What would it look to ask myself a question in a way that would see and truly honor my human design? and just start to like tweak and see if it feels more aligned for you. And you can do this in relation to business, in relation to parenting, in relation to relationships. And specifically, I think the thing that people see a difference the quickest, like when you try anything, you want to like, is this working for me, right? Do I feel anything different? And to me, how we've all been trained to make decisions is so out of alignment with anything that's taught in human design. And I think that's the place where people start to find, oh, I could actually trust myself instead of making a pro-con list or, I'm a former lawyer, like risk benefit analysis and pro-con list and just the cerebral ways. I grew up in a family of engineers, like everything was very cut and dry. And so the idea even of like, whoa, what if I trusted my body? You do this in cyclical living, but what if I trusted my body of what it's saying day to day? And then I love what you're doing of like, if you can layer awareness of your human design on top of awareness of where you're at in your cycle and what might be coming through for you. I just think all of these tools that help us to know who we truly are helpful. So that's kind of a high level. I hope that it's not, human design is not based on a religion. It's not based on any certain doctrines. It was downloaded to a man in the late 80s and then has kind of spread out to have this whole body of work around how to interpret what was downloaded to him.
I just really love how you explain this, that in our society, we are trained mind over matter, mind over body. The mind is a beautiful, beautiful tool. It has its right. Pro-con lists are helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
But they are not the whole picture.
They're not.
And our bodies, our subconscious, they hold so much more information because they receive information constantly from our surroundings that we can't consciously process because it would just be too much for our brain. So we need to access this other part as well so that we can make like a holistic decision.
Yeah. And you just used the perfect word, process. Like our brain processes and we get data and so much like, gosh, the other day I was pumping gas and there was like a screen talking at me. Like no matter where you go, you can't censor and live in a bubble. And so we're constantly processing. But in human design, there are 7 different authorities. If you're curious and you want to go learn about it, authority is the aspect of your human design chart that informs you on your decision making. There are 7, and none of them are the brain. It's that the brain and the mind and the crown chakra and like the crown center are all meant to bring information in. And then the actual processing is meant to happen in the body and more of like, even for some of the authorities, one of the authorities is actually a 28-day lunar cycle, which is interesting. Only 1% of the population has that, is a reflector and has that strategy and authority, but it's not cut and dry for everybody to be making decisions the same way.
Yeah. So how do we use human design to make a decision, or how can it facilitate our decision-making process?
Yeah. So if you do run your chart, it will always say, regardless of where you run it, it will say most people are more familiar with like type. If you're a manifestor or a generator, mani-gen, reflector, or projector, there's 5 types, but there are 7 authorities. And so if you look where it spits out your little chart properties, it might say that you're an emotional manifesting generator, or it might say you're a pure or sacral generator. And so it's that indication right before your type that you're looking for that indicates your authority. And so there are 7, some of the more popular ones, not that we need to get into the nitty gritty, but so for example, I am a sacral. So generators and manifesting generators have the potential, depending on what your authority is, you have the potential to be a sacral generator. And for example, some really great things that I learned about myself as a sacral really quickly is that I need to trust my gut. And as I thought back in my life, there were times in my life when I truly did trust my gut on something, even though it didn't make sense. And when I did that, there was a couple specific scenarios I could think of. It was like the right thing for me, even though I couldn't explain it. And so I was like, wow, what if I listened to that more? What if I started to tune into how my body feels when a yes unfolds? And so now, even only like 6-7 months into my experiment, I know that asking myself yes or no questions, much more clearer for me to get to a decision than if someone asks me, how do you feel about this?
Mm-hmm.
right? If someone asks me, how do you feel? I'm like, I don't know. I literally can't tap into an answer on that. And now I understand that. Whereas my husband is an emotional projector. And so if I ask him yes or no questions, he gets super frustrated, very bitter as a projector would. But if I ask him, how do you feel about us planning a trip? Ooh, he can start to envision, he comes to life. And so as you learn about your authority, there's often, whether you go through a book or a podcast or go through any of my classes, it helps you to start, the more like practical you can get, examples that you can get. Even if you're an emotional authority, there are different waves of what your emotional frequency could look and feel like. And when I show that to clients in a human design reading, and I'm like, you're the one that goes up, down, up, down, up, down,
Mm-hmm.
versus like a slow sine wave, just seeing that visual, people will be like, oh, that happens to me every day, but I thought something was wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
And for some authorities, you're never going to get to a 100% yes or no definitive. And so if you just kind of give yourself permission to be like, oh, I'm meant to feel my way through life. I'm going to get to like 70 to 80%, and that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I thought I was broken. And so there's a lot of times where once you understand what your authority is, it's like we know, the inner knowing in us has always been like, I don't know, when you make decisions this way, it goes well for you. But then society or your family or, you know, if someone says, well, can you explain yourself? You know, in crazy social media land these days, if you state an opinion and then people will be like, what article are you citing? And you're like, I don't know. It just feels freaking right for me. Right? And so I think it takes some courage to start down this experiment of making decisions in a way that other people might not understand. And the more, I mean, in a beautiful synergistic way, if you can be in a little bubble of other people exploring this, it can be very supportive, which is why I create communities in the way that I work with people, because I mean, I'm sure lots of people that you have brought on and done interviews with, we introduce topics that are very outside the norm. And I don't think this is like even if some of your listeners and viewers are like not too far out into the woo woo, like it's very tangible. You can like look at your chart, you can understand it. And what I have found with so many of my clients, even if in business or not, is just getting to a place of taking action after a decision that you have self-doubt about feels very squishy versus I have decided this in a process that I trust and I trust my body. I'm moving forward in action. It feels so different. And whether it be around buying a house or whether it be around launching a business or choosing your child's preschool, like if you can have your process, trust it, and then move forward, it eradicates, maybe not 100%, but it lessens the self-doubt that takes up so much space and energy for so many of us constantly.
Yeah. I was just reflecting on my personal story because me too, I am a 1-3 generator with a sacral authority. And it's often, I do have a strong gut feeling. I know what my gut wants to tell me, but my mind is so conditioned to believe what society has told me that I start questioning this. Is this really true? Can this really be my gut feeling? And then it becomes really squishy. But and I just mentioned this because it's something we need to be aware of. As you said, you suddenly have this sense of, oh, I'm not wrong for making decisions my way. Yeah. And when like my brain kicks in, it's just a conditioning. It's okay that my brain tries to keep me safe, but I am, after all, a sacral generator, and I am allowed to go with my gut feeling.
Yes, it is. I'm allowed to. Like as you were just saying that, the word permission just kept coming up for me of like, and especially dovetailing this and layering this on top of the work that you do. Like when I am in my bleed, I'm like, what questions do I need to ask myself? This is my most honest, vulnerable, raw time to connect to my body. And so getting into Epsom salt baths, using candles and asking yes or no questions, I've gotten to a place where I'm also doing some muscle testing, or some people call it like body dowsing, of asking yes or no questions and trusting which way my body falls. And it's stemming from my sacral. And also doing even some like pendulum swinging. And so if you use any of that, if you're integrating it with human design, integrating it with your cycle, like it's just every month of my cycle, I've been deepening a little bit more of like, what could I be honest about right now? What, for me, what yes or no question would really help to shed some light of how I'm going to approach the next cycle. And so it's kind of been this like human design on top of cyclical living, on top of just deconditioning and noticing, even in the moment. Like sometimes we just had the holidays. So we're recording this right after Thanksgiving in the US, and family time, and even questions that you might be asked in the moment where a lot of my conditioning has just been to be a people pleaser. So a lot of the reasons why I may have ignored my gut in the past is like, oh, I don't know if other people will like this response. But I just practiced in the moment. I like very clearly set a good energy bubble before I went in to hang out with my family and was like, I'm just going to speak my truth. And I trust my body. And if they ask something, I'm going to, speak it. And there was a couple times where it was a little awkward that I spoke my truth, and it was okay. Right? I was safe. It was okay. And so I think for me, it is now becoming just this muscle that I flex to see what would it feel like to make decisions or to speak my truth in the moment, even if I'm not sure how other people react. And so I'm sure that's like a little bit outside of the human design topic itself, but it's not, because we're all living and breathing so many micro decisions every day. Whether you are parenting, run a business, it's like decision, information overload. And the more you can trust that, the more you can move through your day with ease, I believe.
It is. And I do believe it's very much connected to human design, because practicing this, as you say, muscle, flexing the muscle, practicing, it takes time. There will be 100 million moments where you go, oh, I've decided against my gut, or I have not sat through all my emotions or the other authorities that are out there. And that's okay, because it's training yourself. As you say, cycle by cycle, coming closer and a little bit deeper, more deeply connected with yourself. It's the process.
Yeah, and it's been really fascinating, and I hope it's okay if I jump here for a second, but it's been fascinating as a parent, because I know that some of your listeners and viewers are going to be parents and on their own cyclical life as well. And to be a parent and understand that my son is a generator, and to be able to help my husband and myself think about how to interact with him versus, and even I have very like pretty hip parents. They're in their 70s and they're like, okay, why are you guys like quizzing him? Because we ask him a lot of yes or no questions, and they're like, there must be a reason. And so I'm actually for Christmas going to be doing a human design reading of my son and giving it to my parents, because it helps us, just the more we know about someone, like if you know someone's allergic to something, you inform yourself and you help support their experience. If you know that someone makes decisions the best way, or, for generators, for us, our not self theme is frustration. And my parents can get very confused of like, why is he so frustrated? I'm like, well, he's not living out his best alignment right now. How could we support him? And so we don't get it right all the time at all, but even just bringing it, there's a really great book on Amazon about parenting by design. And I purchased that book. It helps me with my clients as well, because we're all inner children in varying phases. And if this concept inspires you, even thinking about how you could support the next generation to trust themselves. Like one of my friends has a splenic projector son, and splenic decision makers, it's like they get this intuitive hit and it may not make sense to anyone, but they got to learn to trust it. And so a good splenic authority example could be like, if you have decided to meet your friend for brunch at a certain restaurant, and you just walk in and you're like, nope, I know you have a table, but we're not eating here. And your friend might be like, what the heck? Like, we've had these plans for 2 weeks. No, let's go across the street. Perhaps 2 weeks later, you find out that everybody that ate there that day got food poisoning. Like splenic authority is that level of like inner knowing. How could you possibly know? But it's your body like bumping you into yeses and nos to direct you to what will be healthiest, because the spleen center has a lot to do with our health and our immune system, and also just like what's generally best for you. But how many people have been conditioned out of that, right? Like you can't just make a split-second decision. Well, why not? My body is saying I don't want to do that. And, one of my clients right now is a mental projector. And so the mental authority, it's all about your environment. and getting input from your environment and being able to trust your body from like speaking, like processing verbally.
Mm-hmm.
And ideally having someone who's not going to steer the course for you. Like if you have a partner who you share something with and they immediately go to fixing things, like that's
Mm-hmm.
very stressful for a mental authority. And so to have a life coach, a business coach, a guide, someone that you can process, that knows how to hold safe space and let you guide yourself, is incredibly valuable, even an accountability buddy or someone. And so once you know your authority, just making like small accommodations for it to be safe to try it, I think just makes a really big difference. I see for myself and my clients, and even my parents, like telling them about each other's authority. I ran their charts real quick and was like, you're in your 70s, but what if you knew each other better? Like, what if you knew how to see each other? I think one of the biggest gaps in today's society is people don't feel seen, like
totally.
and then there's, especially if you run an online business and presence like you do, there's often the question of like, am I being authentic? Am I showing up in my best self? Am I sharing the message how I want to? And even if you're just posting for fun, right? And so there's all these layers that we've never had to even contemplate. Like sometimes I think about my 95-year-old grandmother. Of course, every generation has their own challenges, but I think one of the challenges now is life is so complex.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of us feel so isolated and not seen that I think there are all of these tools for our generation, maybe specifically, coming up around self-awareness, because we're on this journey of like, who am I? If nobody else is going to see me for me, how can I see myself and maybe help others? And so I often think about that of, what challenges did our grandmothers and our mothers have in their mothering journey or their even career and professional path journey, and what do we have now that's different? And I think that gap of just feeling isolated and not seen is a big challenge for women in our generation.
Yeah, and I was immediately reminded of how and why holding space is such a foundational part of my coaching.
Yeah.
Because it allows the other to feel completely seen and held and safe. It allows their nervous system to relax because they don't have to constantly try to be someone else, put on a show, be something, have something, do something they think others will approve of.
Yeah.
Because we have all been conditioned and socialized in a society that tells us, especially as women or people socialized as women, to please others, to make sure that everybody is happy, to put yourself last, to put your needs last. And this is kind of this reclamation, and human design can help in that, to finally say, hey, yeah, but this is what I need in order to feel good and feel fully myself.
Yeah.
And this doesn't mean I take away from you, but how can we make it happen that I can stay in integrity with myself while you also receive what you need? And can we find something in between? And that sounded very much like that when you were talking about how your parents go like work with their grandchild. In this promoting understanding of how the other works and being open enough to maybe do some things that you wouldn't normally do while they are not like taking away from you. I mean, they are
right. It's not
opening
detracting.
to the other.
Yeah, I think that is an interesting way of putting it. And especially in this particular relationship I see unfolding, because when I was a child, I didn't have these tools, right? I didn't know these things or how to communicate. And even as an adult, it's almost like more nerve-wracking for me to speak up about my needs or to explain my design or how to hold space for me to family or people who have a pattern around me. But the mama bear in me is like, no, this is what we do for my son. And I think, there's more and more, I think parents, conscious parenting, whatever approach you're taking, if you're just really trying to make sure your child feels seen and supported, I do think there's a ripple effect in that too. I think a lot of times when we think about intergenerational trauma, intergenerational healing, like if you're healing yourself, I believe it really does heal above and below in your lineage. And so a lot of the people tuning into what you're doing, just to know that even if I've had like a messy freaking month of trauma and shadow healing. Like, I'll just be really honest. I've been working with an energy healer. She does
It
emotion and
was
body code.
Scorpio month, Scorpio brings up the deep shit.
It was like, everything that could have been compounding for me, new levels of awareness, flashbacks, deep, deep healing. And I just kept reminding myself, like, this is happening for me. It's not happening to me. And it's happening for my son, because the more I heal now, hopefully the better experience that he has to figure out who he is and not just be carrying a burden of my baggage. And so a lot of times when I'm doing this deep, crappy work, like, I have the personality, I've just got to chuckle about it and be like, are you kidding me? Another thing? Like, but it's happening for us. And if you're doing the work and following what Lisa does, like, just getting deeper and deeper, it doesn't have to be scary. Of course, sometimes the things that come up are scary, especially if you have bottled something up or dissociated, like your body had a reason to protect you. But if you're an adult now and you can provide yourself safe network, like everything that Lisa offers and people that she brings here onto the show, there's so many people who are there to hold that space, and finding the person that helps you do that is, I think, it's just part of our journey right now, is finding each other.
Finding each other and finding ourselves.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I gravitate so much more these days to having conversations with people like you and some of my friends who are just like willing to go there and have the deep conversation that I like. Some of my favorite conversations right now, I can hop on Telegram and talk to my friend Caitlin, and she's a breathwork facilitator and she's finishing her master's in counseling. So she's like kind of down the, diagnostics and doing all these different internships around like counseling. But then we can just have these conversations where I can hop in Telegram and be like, oh my God, have you ever thought about past life regression? And just go there and talk about our human designs and talk about what we're learning and talk about, generational patterns we see that we don't want carrying forward. And I think for those of us who are doing this level of depth of work, it's so healing just to talk to other people who are willing to go there, even if it's not all on the same page, but just to like hold space for each other. So even if you're not working with a coach or a guide or someone specifically, but you just have that friend that you're like, I wish we were in better touch, because we can always go there on good topics. Like, maybe your journey right now is just flexing the muscle to have the honest like, can we talk more about how can we be in better contact? Because I do think doing this type of work, even right now, I'm in a small group container with a breathwork facilitator who does cyclical embodiment, and sent us this tracker as a part of the program. And I'm tracking so much more specifically because I'm in this small group for 5 weeks, but I hope to carry that forward beyond. And so whether you're professionally investing and working with someone, or just buying yourself the tracker, or doing something that Lisa has talked about and seeing how it feels, or running your human design chart and seeing if it resonates with you when you open it, like, these little things are being put in our field. And the more we can just sit with it, trust it. Oh, my body does feel pulled to that. My authority is peaking up for that. If that's something that you step into, there's so much to explore. You can only do a little bit at a time.
And I want to just briefly point that out again. It's this trust is something that builds over time. It will not be there next week.
I know.
It takes time. It takes an experiment, as you say. It's an experiment of trusting yourself more and more and more. Do you have maybe a tip of what people can do when they've run their chart? They now know their authority and what they are quote unquote supposed to do with their decisions. And now the mind kicks in, who tells them that all the whatever beliefs they have about what they should or shouldn't do. And they are confused again. How do they manage to come back to this own decision-making process?
Yeah. Well, I think there's like tiers of how much you can dive into this. Like, of course, there's beautiful podcasts. I actually run Intuitive Business by Design podcast. And so if you have any interest in business at all, we talk about human design and how to apply it. In fact, this week's episode is about making business decisions with your authority. So you can tap, there's so many beautiful leaders that have podcasts and blogs. You can Google, like, you can get some information and to know like, oh, I'm not the only person. There's like so many people diving into this. So there's like the information gathering phase that can be very fun and exploratory and kind of help give you like little nuggets. Of course, I find that getting a one-on-one human design reading is so helpful to see like, okay, there's the authority, but then how does my strategy play into it? And like seeing how your whole chart works. So I offer one-on-one human design readings. I call them compressed time because we like take all of the self-learning you could do and compress it. And then there's being in community with others. There's memberships out there. There's programs out there. If human design is really calling to you, it is hard to do on your, like for me anyway. I'm someone who likes to get to mastery. So I bought a bunch of books and just reading them without processing was like, okay, this makes sense, but I don't know, like still nobody has told me what it feels like for them to have a gut sacral yes. And so that community and the conversation I do think is really important. And so if it is something that you're being drawn to, like finding a membership, finding some kind of even low level community where you can be having this kind of conversation. So there's kind of like the information gathering, the personalizing, and then staying in community with others who are on the experiment. And even just if you're in your own space and in your own energy and wanting to explore it, I think journaling is really amazing, even though some like the splenic authority may be like, but I can't journal in the moment. Like I've just got to follow it. But processing later in the day, what did it feel like today to follow through? And, you know, I got that intuitive hit and I followed it, or I got that intuitive hit and I didn't, or I don't feel like I got intuitive hits today. Maybe I wasn't very self-aware today. And just starting to like even journal what it feels like as you're making decisions. I now know that when I have a yes, that's in my highest alignment, it feels very light. It feels like my sacral is almost like a lotus opening, like light kind of shining out. For me, some people will say like it's a full body pull. That's not for me. For me, it's more like I can feel all of my chakras kind of opening up and stemming from the sacral. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a yes. Interesting. And for me, a no is like, ugh, it feels squishy, like I'm being put into a compactor. And I don't know that other people describe it that way. But if I was talking to someone else who is also like you, a 1-3 pure generator, then to just like toss, you might be like, oh, I don't feel a lightning. I feel, you know, you might have different adjectives, and just hearing that is going to help me as well to tune into different things. So I do think that the community and the conversation can't always be replaced by a book, but there are some really beautiful books out there. And I will hold this up for those watching the video. I love this book, even if you're not for parenting right now. Parenting the Child You Have by April Porter it breaks human design just down so simply because they're helping you understand how to kind of speak it to a child. And sometimes that's how I like to learn.
Those are the best.
So that's a book I would recommend if you're on your journey on your own. Parenting the Child You Have, even if the child you have is you, is a great place to start.
I love it. Yeah, thanks. Right, the journaling is super helpful. Finding out how your sacral yes or your sacral no show up as. And the part of the community, because that's something I believe in too. We heal on our own, and also we heal together. Because sometimes we need just people to reflect our own light, to have our own light reflected back to us, to reflect it back to someone else, to verbal process, to just have this shared feeling of I'm not alone in this life. In this crazy thing called life.
Crazy thing. Yeah. And I have the great fortune to have a husband who like, he's there for it. He'll be like, what's my witchy wife up to today? What you got? What you doing? And so he's been very interested in human design, and I've helped him experiment, and it helped him to really acquire an amazing career shift by leveraging his strategy as a projector. And so the other day I was, it's Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend here in the States as we're recording this. And there's a lot of offers and a lot of discounts and a lot of things that you could be investing in, whether it's something for your personal life or weight loss. Gosh, there's so many things. And there's a couple investments that I was weighing, and I was kind of like processing to my husband, and he and I have a really great relationship where he doesn't ask me to I don't have to get permission for in business investment. He really trusts me, but sometimes I just want to process, and was kind of talking through, and I was kind of like very left brain lawyer Chelsea, as he would say, being like, well, this is why I think it's a good idea. Let me present it to you. And he was like, babe, are you excited? Like, how does your body feel right now as you describe this plan to me? And like, what's your gut saying? And I was like, oh, swoon, like you're so, there for me. And it was the reminder I needed to be like, I feel freaking excited. Like the people that I want to invest to join my team, I'm hiring an online business manager, I'm hiring a social media agency. And I was just like, I feel freaking excited. I can picture myself getting from one call, going to the next, and then going to pick up my son and knowing that things are getting taken care of and I don't have to be up late at night. And he was like, then do it. He literally said, every time I've seen you make a decision from your gut, since you've learned about this, it's paid off in spades. So why don't you just stop doubting that? And I was like, yeah, that's a really good reminder. So, if you have someone in your life, whether it's a spouse, a partner, a friend who's like on board with this, even having them as the person who knows what your authority is and to like hold you to that self-leadership standard of like, you've said you trusted this. Are you really going to trust it? It's a really valuable conversation to have.
Perfect. So, Chelsea, if somebody would like to connect with you further, either maybe they have got some questions or would like to, I will definitely link to everything you've mentioned below. But if they want to get in touch for anything or maybe even work with you, how can they find you? Where can they find you? What's your preferred way of contacting?
Come find me. Yes. And if you reach out, always please let me know that you found me on Lisa's show, because I love connectedness, right? We need to find each other. I love knowing where conversation stemmed from, and I'll think back to the energy of this conversation and kind of like know where you're coming in. So I am the handle of Intuitive Business Mentor on Instagram and TikTok. I'm very active on both of those platforms. My website is intuitivebusinessbydesign.com, and that's also the name of my podcast. You can check out my podcast pretty much everywhere podcasts go. And if you do have that side of you that is interested in business, I have a free masterclass right on my website that's called How to Align Your Online Business with Your Human Design. And it introduces you to 3 core chart properties, including authority, but also your type and strategy. And you do not have to be coming to me for business advice to seek out a human design reading. So if you have the inclination to just have that personalized type reading, that would be my compressed time container. You can find it on my website or ask me about it, but I always hold spots every month for people. And as you come in through that process, you fill out a form of like, what are you hoping to get out of this reading? Because it doesn't have to be through the lens of business. But of course, if you want to go there, I love merging them together. So feel free to come find me. Let me know that you found me on Lisa's show. And I would love to have a conversation or even just answer questions.
Cool. Yeah. Do you have some closing words? Anything that would love to come through your channel, your message to the people out there?
I think this message of what came really through for me today, this message of just flexing the muscle. That if you do breath work, they talk about, just trust the breath, trust the body doing the work. I think there's also, when you think about muscles, you think about the body and like anatomy. If you step into something like human design, if you can just allow it to be light and allow it to be in an observer status of, oh, I flexed my muscles of authority great today. Oh, I didn't. It just kind of like I went to the gym or I didn't today. Like it's just a fact. And I think if you can step into something like this with a lightheartedness, with the vision of flexing the muscle to try it out and not put rigidity around it or put yourself into a box of like, I have to do things a certain way because my chart says so. Like, what if you just let it be a new level of awareness, flex the muscle and see what that experiment unfolds as? If you do dive into human design, that's the intention I would encourage you to step into it with.
I love it. Let curiosity lead and let it be an experiment without judging, without beating yourself up for it, because
we do that in so many ways. Absolutely. Well, thank you for holding space for this conversation. I hope it blesses some of the people who listen in. You're doing amazing, beautiful work. I love following what you're doing and seeing it all unfold. And I'm honored to just have been invited in to bring this conversation to people who might be tuning in.
Thank you so much for being here. It was definitely a pleasure. And I encourage everybody who has questions around their human design or who would like to get a reading to contact Chelsea, because I know she can do some shit.
It's fun. Very good.
Thanks for being here today and have a beautiful day wherever you are. Bye.
Mm.